Hi everybody, Douglas V. Gibbs, Constitution Podcast. Been a while. Got our camera fixed, got our audio fixed. Looks like we're ready to start doing videos again. So have fun with this one. First of all, Happy New Year 2021. I'm jazzed that it's a new year. I think everybody agrees that 2020 is better left behind us. All right, now that all said, I decided we need to do a special video for 2020. Since 2020 was such a wonderful year, let's have a countdown of the top 10 unconstitutional happenings of 2020. You may not agree with the order. You may think that there should be other things added. And if that's the case, shoot me an email, constitutionspeaker@yahoo.com, and we'll do so. But here's the list anyway. So let's before we get going to the list, let's remember the United States Constitution is all about the rule of law versus the rule of man. In other words, rule of law inherent by creator, it's self-evident, it applies universally, existed before the emergence of governments because it's God-given. Applies individually based on moral principles, unalienable, inseparable, and affected by an individual's pursuits, rather than man's law, which takes natural law and throws it out the window because men are king here, they are the rulers, is provided by government, made evident by the ruling class, applies variably based on the whims of the ruling class, the existence varies, rather than existing before the emergence of governments, it exists as they decide it should exist. It applies collectively. It's based on secularism, relativism, and pluralism, separable by government. In other words, it's not unalienable. Government can decide when or when you cannot have your rule of man and rights and so on and so forth. And the pursuits quelled based on definition of equality. In other words, your individual pursuits matter only if government lets it matter. And that's the basic foundation of constitutional principles of liberty in general. Now, that said, when it comes to the Constitution, and I just mentioned this on my radio program on KMET 1490 AM on Saturday's program, the 2nd, January 2nd, also, the federal government, when it was created, was not created for we the people. It was created by we the people for the purpose of handling the issues that local government may not be able to handle. In other words, the federal government is not there for the people. State government is. Your local government, localism. Federal government is there to handle external issues, controversies between the states, other stuff that's outside what would locally be in the best interest of the community. The community is supposed to be taken care of by local laws. All right, so now, that all said, I just wanted to get you a basic foundation here of the U.S. Constitution. Let's go through our top 10 unconstitutional happenings of 2020. Number 10, ineligible candidates. Kamala Harris is, and some people might think this rate's higher, and maybe it does, but Kamala Harris is ineligible to be Vice President of the United States, ineligible to be President, because of something called natural-born citizen. Now, when it comes to natural-born citizen, and I want to go through this quickly because we got 9 more to go through. Natural-born citizen, according to the Founding Fathers, meant both parents were citizens at the time of birth. For those of you who want to argue with me, no problem. Let's go to the resource that the framers used at the time of the writing of the Constitution. They had 3 copies in the chambers during the debate over this U.S. Constitution. Vattel's Law of Nations. Vattel's Law of Nations at the time, when they were figuring out the definition, it said that a natural-born citizen was a person born on the soil of citizen parents, plural. Both parents needed to be citizens at the time of birth. With the Immigration and Naturalization Act of 1790, they added another definition. Someone could be born outside of American soil, but they still required both parents to be citizens at the time of their birth in order to be a natural-born citizen. The term natural-born citizen does not mean naturally born on American soil. If that was the case, they would have just put born citizen. That's a born citizen. But natural-born citizen is a step up from just a born citizen. And we know that it's more than just being a citizen as well, because in the clause, in Article 2, Section 1, it says natural-born citizens or a citizen at the time of the ratification of this Constitution. Because there were no natural-born citizens yet old enough to be president, because all of those who were natural born, in other words, born of citizen parents, were 11 or under in age because, well, the United States had only been a country since 1776. The Constitution was written in 1787. That said, Kamala Harris is an ineligible candidate, just like Marco Rubio, Ted Cruz, and Bobby Jindal in the 2016 election, and just like Barack Obama in the 2012 and 2008 elections. You want to call me a birther? That's fine. The purpose of a natural-born citizen requirement was to make sure there was no foreign influence. This system we did not want a foreign individual to come in and be king or something. Our system was so special, and there was worries about foreign influence, especially when it came to the Tories of the time, who were usually tended to have at least one parent that was of British birth. So that's number 10, ineligible candidates. That's our 10th most unconstitutional happening of 2020. Number 9. Number 9 on our list is impeachment. The impeachment was not unconstitutional in the sense that the president couldn't be impeached constitutionally. He could be. The House of Representatives has the sole power to impeach, and that is to charge. What was unconstitutional about it is the fact that there was nothing really there was no impeachable offense. He had done nothing wrong. It was all a sideshow. It was all a political show to create distrust in the president, distrust in the presidency, and so on and so forth. Of course, they follow that up with other happenings also that tore into our system, and we'll get to that. But anyway, so number 9 was impeachment. Not that they couldn't impeach. Congress has the sole power to impeach. It was the fact that there was nothing really to impeach them over. They claimed it was high crimes, misdemeanors, all that, and that just did not exist. There were no impeachable offenses there. There was no there, I guess you could say. So, there you go. Number 8. The number 8 unconstitutional happening in 2020 was the United States Supreme Court rejecting or refusing to take the Texas case, suing 4 other states for inappropriate election handling, breaking their own laws, election laws. The Supreme Court, on a 7-2 vote, the only 2 that said it was the case they wanted to take was Clarence Thomas and Alito. The rest of them all voted against, saying that Texas had no standing. Now, standing, the 3 basic legs of standing is injury, that the injury could be is somehow attached to the person who's being sued, and that the injury could be rectified or partially rectified by the lawsuit should the ruling come in favor of the plaintiff. Now, that idea behind standing is so that we aren't suing each other for no reason whatsoever. I can't sue you just because, well, you're you. So I'm going to sue him. Well, there was no injury. How was I injured? How were you involved in that injury against me? And will the lawsuit rectify the situation regarding that injury? That's all standing. And it's an important thing in our legal system. But the problem is standing has gotten to the point where it's been stretched so badly that it's used for everything. And when it comes to something like the states suing other states over something, there is no standing. The states have darn good reason to, because if they believe another state has created a controversy between the states that influences the union in a negative manner, there's plenty of standing there. In Article 3, Section 2, it says that the purpose of the federal courts, among the court's responsibilities are to take care of controversies between two or more states. Exact words in Article 3, Section 2. Controversies between two or more states. Was not the Texas case a controversy between two or more states? Absolutely. They believe that the election being mishandled by those four states influenced the election overall, which means it influenced all states and all we the people, and therefore Texas wanted to sue to have those electors thrown out because of the negative impact their mishandling of the election was having on this election. So it was unconstitutional for the United States Supreme Court to reject the Texas lawsuit. Their very existence. I mean, we talk about, did I not say this at the very beginning of this video? The purpose of the federal government is to handle external issues and controversies between the states. Whatever has to do with the union itself. This has to do with the union. In Article 3, Section 2 is clear. Federal court must take the cases that involve controversies between two or more states. Very unconstitutional. Unfortunately, the latest constitutionalist, Amy Barrett, denied her constitutionalism by siding with the leftist judges. Only Alito and Thomas seem to understand that the Supreme Court needed to take this case. And because the case wasn't taken, the election still continues. All right, so that's number 8. Number 7 is religious freedoms. Our religious freedoms have been under attack my entire life, but especially these last few years. Religious freedoms, it says in the Constitution, the Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. What the left has done is they have turned issues that would normally not be political, so that they can try to shut the churches up, say, hey, churches have no business having anything to say about that, it's now political, even though you were preaching about it all along and we didn't care before. But then the COVID-19 scamdemic came along and they really began to attack religious liberties. Suddenly you couldn't even go to church. And I just have to ask a simple question, especially when it comes to the federal government. Each of the states also have religious liberties language in their state constitution. But when it comes to our religious liberties, I don't recall in the Constitution it saying freedom of religion unless there's a virus, or freedom of religion unless anything. No laws, no actions, no governor, no president, no Congress, no legislature can prohibit the free exercise thereof. Number 6, the electoral mayhem, the electoral fraud, the electors, the electoral college, winner takes all attitude by the state. Stop right there. The election, the attempt to steal the election. First of all, the President of the United States is not the President of the people. He's President of the United States. So the reason why it was originally electors is the state legislatures were choosing electors to choose the president to run the government that's going to handle the external stuff. There was no democratic vote by the people. Why? Because the government that handles your stuff, that influences your life, is your local government. Presidency, while influencing your life, and you could influence the president through our House of Representatives, which was the only democratically voted federal office in the beginning, really the president was about the state legislatures. Because it's the state legislatures who want a federal government to handle external issues so that the state legislatures don't have to worry about those issues. All they have to worry about is, well, local stuff. It's all about protecting localism. There shouldn't even been a popular vote. It's all about the electors in the state legislatures. But since we do have it the way we have it, no problem. Let's at least try to keep it as close to the Constitution as we can. But no, the left wants to throw out the Electoral College, and they want to use as much fraud as they can. Why? Because they don't like our republic. They want a democracy. Because in a democracy, it's easier to control everything. All they got to do is convince you. And they don't even have to convince you. All they have to do is be the ones counting the votes. And that's what we found out this year. Who cares about who votes? What matters is who counts the votes, right? We found that out after midnight on Election Day. Our whole election, the whole fraud, everything is based on unconstitutional foundation. And it's because we have moved away from the Constitution, a situation like the 2020 election could happen. Number 6 is the election. Number 5. Number 5 is the insurrection, the rioting, the call for the end of law and order, the abolish the police, defund the police, whatever they want to call it, demilitarize the police, whatever they want to call it. The whole reason for government is so we can live in an orderly society. And a part of that is having laws and then having a part of government who enforces those laws. That is what government does. It's an evil sometimes, but it's a necessary evil. We don't necessarily like having authority over us. We just want to do what we want. But if we want to do just what we want, then we wind up with chaos and anarchy, and then there's no order. And then when there's no order, everything gets out of whack, and everybody starts complaining. There's chaos, and there's violence in the streets, and then the very people who were calling for the violence and the chaos then promise the order. But they promise it in a different manner. And that's what happened in the Soviet Union, that's what happened in Venezuela, and that's what could happen here if we continue to let this stuff happen. Now here's the thing about it. The whole defund the police and all of that, that's insurrection. I'm not going to get too deep into it yet because we've got insurrection a little further down our list. But our leaders allowing this to go on and assisting it is very unconstitutional. Fortunately, we had a president that was very careful about it, and he did act in a constitutional manner. Because the reality is the federal government can't get involved unless it's believed that it's gone to the point where it's affecting national security, or in order to protect like federal buildings, things like that. Otherwise, they can't come into a state without permission. Anyway, number 5 was the riots and the call for abolish the police, and basically to abolish law and order. Number 4. Number 4 on our list is the COVID protocols. Now, first of all, there's nothing in the Constitution that says that your rights should be suspended because of anything, especially a virus. They say, well, Doug, no, it's an emergency situation. It's for the common good and the general welfare. No, that's not what those things mean when it comes to the U.S. Constitution. And your state constitutions also are very, very specific in what they allow also. First of all, you have these governors are acting with executive orders to put these COVID protocols into place. They're acting legislatively. Everybody says, yeah, but the legislatures gave them that power. They can't. If you read your state constitution, I believe all of them use this language. It says that the legislative power is vested in the legislature of the state. The word vested means is irrevocable, cannot be given away. The ability to make law and to make state actions that are legally binding, in other words, make law, belongs only to the legislature, and they can't even give it away. The word vested means it's irrevocable. So the governor's acting and saying, well, this is law because, I said so. It's unconstitutional. Against the state constitution, too. And at what point are these COVID protocols interfering with the obligation of contracts? Service contracts, employee contracts, and so on and so forth. It says in Article 1, Section 10 of the United States Constitution that the states can make no law that interfere with the obligation of contracts. Oh, but it's okay in the case of an emergency, I'm told. That's what the judges have said, but that's not what the Constitution says. This whole COVID-19 protocols, the forcing you to wear a mask and trying to force you to stay at home and closing down restaurants and dictating to churches, all of it is not only unconstitutional from a U.S. Constitution point of view, but violates the state constitutions as well. But the tyrants are taking advantage anyway. Number 4 is the COVID-19 protocol. Number 3. And number 3 is our courts and the idea of packing the courts, and that the courts have all this power and that legislation is guided by the courts and so on and so forth. This has actually been a problem for a couple hundred years. Judicial review is the problem. Marbury versus Madison, 1803. The courts gave themselves the power through John Marshall's edict, his opinion in the Marbury versus Madison case, that basically says that the courts can review law and decide whether or not it's constitutional and toss it if they don't like it. Now, first of all, that's a legislative authority, and it says in Article 1, Section 1 of the United States Constitution that all legislative powers herein granted shall be vested in a Congress. In other words, courts are not allowed to have any legislative authorities, including the striking down of laws. They can have an opinion that a law is unconstitutional, but to change that law, to modify it, to strike it down, it requires legislative action. The judiciary is there to apply the law as it is written, not to review it. And, I've gotten in arguments about people. They say, well, the Constitution is about a limited government, but they say the courts have the power of judicial review. Really? Well, let's say judicial review in the case of a federal law, and the federal court decides that a federal law is unconstitutional or it's constitutional. What they're doing is they're deciding whether or not the federal government has authority over the issue that's in that law. So what's happening is the federal government, through the court system, is deciding for itself what its own authorities are. How is that limited government? Judicial review, the courts, packing the courts having this kind of power, all of it is very unconstitutional. Number two is actually one I mentioned earlier, insurrection. Remember I was talking about the rioting? Insurrection. Here's the unconstitutional part about it. Is an 14th Amendment, Section 3, it indicates that any person who has made an oath, an affirmation of the U.S. Constitution, and holds office, and then gives aid to insurrection, loses their ability, their right, their authority to hold office. They lose it. They can't hold office anymore. They should be arrested and removed from office. And the only way they can get back that ability to hold office is if they were to convince 2/3 of each House of Congress to remove that disability. So that means that every single mayor, governor, city council member, county supervisor, state legislator, member of Congress, Senate, or the House, all of these people who have supported the rioting and insurrection in the streets, supported them, BLM and Antifa, and all these people who are trying to overthrow the United States Constitution, because that's what they're doing. It's all Marxist. All of these people that are holding office, that have given their support, the favorable words, press, money, all of that should be removed from office. They should be arrested because it says, once again, I'll go over it again, but this time I'm going to read it word for word. 14th Amendment, Section 3, no person shall be a senator or representative in Congress or elector of president and vice president or hold any office, civil or military, under the United States or under any state who, having previously taken an oath as a member of Congress or as an officer of the United States or as a member of any state legislature or as an executive or judicial officer of any state to support the Constitution of the United States, shall have engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the same or given aid or comfort to the enemies thereof. But Congress may, by a vote of 2/3 of each house, remove such disability. Number 2 unconstitutional happening in 2020 is the fact that we've got all of these people who hold office supporting Antifa, supporting BLM, supporting insurrection, and not being thrown out of office. They should be gone, all of them, arrested. How do we do that? Constitutional sheriffs would be a start. And finally, number 1. The number 1 most unconstitutional thing of 2020 has to do with Georgia and the Senate races and the popular vote when it comes to those Senate races. Here's the thing. In the Constitution, when it talks about the states, and it mentions the states, what it means is the state legislatures, not the people who vote in the states. If the people and the states were one and the same, then it wouldn't say at the end of the 10th Amendment that the authorities that are not delegated to the federal government, not prohibited to the states, are reserved to the states or to the people. The people and the states are two different entities. They're two different things. When the Constitution refers to the states, they're talking about the state legislatures. In the 17th Amendment, it changed the appointment of the U.S. senators by the state legislatures to a vote by the people. At the end of Article 5 of the Constitution, it says that states cannot be deprived of their equal suffrage in the Senate without their consent. The states cannot be deprived of their equal suffrage in the Senate without their consent. The argument is, well, Doug, the Senate still has equal suffrage for the states. No, it doesn't. Yes, there's 2 per state. It's still equal suffrage, but whose suffrage is it? It is no longer the state's suffrage. The representation, the voice now belongs to the people. The states lost their suffrage to the voters of the state. Now, that said, people say, well, gosh, Doug, it was ratified, though. That's the way it is. Okay, fine. But any state that did not give its consent should not have to do it that way. They should be able to still appoint their senators. And guess among the states that did not ratify the 17th, one of the states that is among that population of states. You got it, Georgia. Georgia is forced to go through this election, this jungled primary, which is garbage anyway, the popular vote, and our whole country is hinging on it when Georgia never gave its consent to lose its equal suffrage in the Senate. In other words, if Georgia was smart, they'd say, hey, 17th Amendment doesn't apply to us because we never ratified it. We're going to appoint our senators. Forget this election. It's all a fraud. The state legislature is going to appoint its senators. The fact that it is not that way, and that the Senate race on the 5th runoff in Georgia, with all of the election fraud that's going on, we know they're going to try to pull fraud with this too. None of it would matter if we were following the Constitution. And the states never lost their equal suffrage without their consent. 17th Amendment's part of the problem, and part of the problem is that the states that did not approve it, did not ratify it, did not give their okay, they're being forced to follow it as well. And once again, in Article 5, it says that the states will not lose, must not, cannot lose their equal suffrage without their consent. And they have. Georgia being one of them. That's our number one unconstitutional happening of 2020. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you learned something. It's a little on the long side. I tend to do that sometimes. It's nice to be able to be back to making videos. I enjoy doing this. I'll see if I can get back into the practice again. If you want to help out with what I do, the radio show, for example, is about $1,500 short right now in funding itself for the next quarter. Go to politicalpistachio.com or douglasvgibbs.com. You can see those links right there. And donate. Your money will go towards the effort to spread constitutional literacy and promote patriotic advocacy. I will put it into the radio show. I will put it into buying more pocket constitutions. I will put it into my efforts to get the Constitution into schools and all the other efforts I do. And if you want to check out the classes I do, go to politicalpistachio.com, douglasvgibbs.com, hit classes in the link bar, and where all my classes are will appear for you. The one in Carlsbad on Thursday nights at 6 Pacific is also available on Zoom. It's a $10 head charge, but if you per Zoom meeting, and the Zoom link changes each week. But if you get a hold of Julie at 1776 foreverfree.com, she can set you up to watch me on Zoom teach my class there in Carlsbad. That all said, we're done with this video. We'll see you next time. Thanks for watching, and God bless America.